action, focus, discipline. This is the Zero Excuses podcast. Each and every week, we talk to high-performing, inspirational athletes, entrepreneurs, and leaders. We ask powerful questions to extract their tools, strategies, and life lessons for you to crush your excuses, to break out of your comfort zone, and accomplish your ambitious dreams and goals. Here's your host, Kenyon HERE.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the podcast. Excited to have you here, and I'm excited to bring you today's guest, Anton Kraly from Dropship Lifestyle. And he is here to talk about how he has built a lifestyle for himself where he only works an hour or two a week, and now he has transitioned into the space of helping others do the same through his community that he has built. We get into some discussions today that are not only specific to e-commerce and the dropshipping concept, but are also applicable to other areas of business and even into your day-to-day life. We talk about some things like information overload and taking a bit of a break from reading and educating yourself and going into a 2 or 3 month period of time where you're doing nothing but taking action and just taking very bite-sized samples of information along the way while you are taking action. But before we get into today's conversation with Anton, just got a couple quick announcements and reminders. If you haven't already hopped into our Discipline Deep Dive session that launched on August 1st, still have time to hop in. We record all the sessions, so if you want to hop in on that, it's never too late. But what that is this is a 5-week intensive course where we go through the fundamentals that you need to build discipline and install the structures and routines and habits in your life to absolutely crush your goals and do it in a predictable and repeatable manner. You can just go to kenyonziska.com/DDD for Discipline Deep Dive and get signed right up. Secondly, I've noticed a tremendous amount of reviews popping into iTunes, and it's definitely helping get the word out about what we're doing here at the Zero Excuses podcast. You can go to kenyonziska.com/iTunes to add your own review. Would appreciate it if you take the time to do that. And also while you're there, don't forget to subscribe and share the show with a friend, family member, coworker, anybody who you think might benefit from hearing the topics and conversations that we have on here. Appreciate you sharing it with them. All right, guys, enough of all that. Let's hop into the conversation with Anton. Anton, thanks for taking time out of your schedule to join us here on the Zero Excuses podcast. Really excited to get to know you a little bit here and get you in front of my audience and just get to know you a lot better. So why don't you give yourself an introduction here and let's rock.
Yeah. And thanks for having me on. Happy to be here and hopefully share something that people didn't know before. But my name is Anton Kraly. I'm a 34-year-old guy. Was born and raised in New York and currently in Charlotte, North Carolina now, but have been traveling around, pretty much living in different places all over the world for the past decade or so. Spent a lot of time in Southeast Asia, was down in South America for a bit. And the whole time I've been doing it while running different online businesses. The main ones being e-commerce stores that are using the dropship model for fulfillment.
Awesome, man. So like I mentioned pre-show here, I actually had to go and look up what drop shipping is, and I've definitely heard of e-commerce, but I really haven't heard of the drop shipping concept. So can you explain to our listeners what that might be?
Sure. So there's lots of different ways to do drop shipping, but really it's like a high level term. So not anything new. Even if people think back to the 80s and early 90s where mail order catalogs were really big, people would receive all these things to their home and they would basically see products listed for sale. Then they would either call the magazine or they would fill out a little card and mail it in. And when you ordered from those companies back then, a lot of them never had warehouses. They didn't stock their own products. People would buy them and then they would contact the brand that makes these things and say, hey, ship this to this person and that to this person. So that was drop shipping. And we basically do that, but online. So we have all different products available for sale. We put them on our own websites. So we're not selling on eBay. We're not selling on Amazon. We're selling on our own stores, and they're physical products. So people will come to us, they'll place an order. When that happens, we get the money, and then we place that order with the supplier of whatever product the customer ordered. And that means that we're not buying inventory. We don't have warehouses. We don't use fulfillment centers. We simply sell products. And when people order, we have the brands that make them ship them direct to the customer.
Okay. So now do you have to have some sort of like wholesale deal set up with a particular supplier, or how does that
Yep.
work?
Yeah, so there's different ways to do it. And what a lot of people are doing now, which we don't do and I don't recommend, is they're just drop shipping products from China. And a lot of those don't have any brand names attached to them. They're typically more inexpensive type things, more of impulse buy type products.
Mhm.
That's not what we do. What we do is pick an industry that we want to get into. I'm at a stand-up desk right now. So let's just say I said, I want to sell stand-up desks. I would then go on Google and I would find every company that makes stand-up desks. And I would actually reach out to them to have that relationship. And I would say, hey, this is Anton from AntonsStandUpDesks.com. We know you make great products. We would love to be an authorized retailer. And from there, you're typically filling out a contract that's maybe a page long, and it's just them giving you permission to sell their products. So it's definitely relationship based.
Cool. Sounds pretty simple, and definitely want to dive into that as we have a conversation here. But the burning question in my mind is how did you get to this point? I mean, you
Yeah.
you mentioned that you travel the world, and you've been doing this about 10 years.
Mhm.
What transpired prior to that got you into this?
Yeah, so this is not at all what I thought I'd be doing when I was younger, like way back when I was like 5 years old. I remember one of my uncles is an entrepreneur. He has like a air conditioning and heating business in Manhattan. So they install these massive things on skyscrapers. But I remember we would go to his house for Christmas every year, and like he had a bigger house than my family. He had some sports cars. He had a bunch of boats. He had another house in Florida. And I remember just like asking him when I was probably 4 or 5. I was like, "Why do you have all this?" And he said, I just took a chance and I left my job as an engineer in that space and I just started my own business and it paid off. So I just knew from back then, like, okay, I want to be an entrepreneur. Didn't know what that was going to be, but I thought if I want to have this stuff, I have to basically earn it. I have to be the person building the businesses. And, fast forward to the point where I was 21 years old, got out of school, upstate New York in SUNY Albany. And what I did was buy the cheapest business I could find as like my way into the business world. That business was a delivery route for a bakery that was in Brooklyn, New York. So I spent 25 grand for the rights to drive into Brooklyn every day, fill up a truck with cookies, then drive to grocery stores on Long Island where I'm from and sell them store to store. So I did that for a few months. This is around 2007.
Mhm.
And that's when the book, The 4 Hour Workweek, came out by Tim Ferriss. So that book, got to give a ton of credit. It opened my eyes to e-commerce. It basically had a chapter saying, hey, you don't need to be technical. You don't need to know how to code. Anybody can use these tools online and make a website. So I thought, okay, I have this access to cookies and
Yeah.
I, have this little like chapter on building an e-commerce store. Let me make a e-commerce store for cookies. And that was what I did. It was called New York Cookie Shop. It was my first ever website. And within a few weeks, that little website I built for $29 myself, I built it in a library on a computer that was making more money than the business I spent $25,000 for driving around in traffic. So that got me hooked on e-commerce like right away. And from there, it's been finding more products, finding better products, selling more expensive products, getting better at traffic and conversion optimization and building a team and just growing along the way. But that was my transition into the world of e-commerce.
Right on. So it sounds like you had at a very early age you had exposure to these different ways of thinking.
Hmm.
I know my upbringing. I was kind of always in that blue collar mindset. Your 40-hour plus work week. Do your time. Earn your overtime if you want some extra money. Things like that. So I know you work with other entrepreneurs. Like, what's kind of the biggest hang up to getting them to shift their minds into
Yeah.
that mindset?
Yeah, that's why I love the name of your show, because it really is, it's being able to do the work. That's all it comes down to.
Yeah.
And I do think that seeing that early on helped me. Same thing. Like my dad was a butcher his whole life. My mom did inside sales for like an electronic component company. Had a nice life, like wasn't missing on anything, but not wealthy by any means. And just seeing though, like someone in my family every year, and just seeing like, oh, people actually do live like that. And, having somebody tell me, my uncle, like, I'm not smarter than your parents. I'm not better than them. I just did this instead. That just, it let me know, like, again, like if I want this, I just have to do it. That's it. Like, it's just a choice. I could have done what all my buddies did from school and got a normal job and went through the years of promotions and layoffs and raises and switching. But I just knew, like, if this is going to happen, if I'm going to be successful, like as an entrepreneur, it's not up to anybody else. It comes down to, are you willing to do the work? So what I've seen from people in our communities and people that I work with, really the most successful ones, it's not people that are, the smartest people in the room usually. Actually, I've noticed that sometimes like the people that are already very successful, maybe in their jobs, are not that successful with this. And it's because they're comfortable already. So a lot of people that do very well are, I don't want to say desperate, but maybe that is a good word, because they're kind of locked somewhere. And they also see, like, if I want this, I have to earn it. I have to do the work. I have to call suppliers. I have to build a website. I have to learn how to get traffic. And it's almost out of necessity, where they just push through, because like any business, in the beginning, you're working and you're not getting paid. When you're building your store, when you're calling suppliers, there's no clock running that you're billing people for. The money comes later. So it's like, are you willing to delay the gratification of having a business? And if you are, then good things come down the road. Maybe that's 2 months, maybe that's 3 months, maybe that's 6 months. But when people are already kind of set and they're comfortable, it's harder for them to do what needs to be done.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point there, and I've talked about this before on the podcast, but you have to be good at putting pressure on yourself. That's I think the basis of building self-discipline is finding that reason to do something, and having that vision. And I know this sounds so cliche, but having that why behind
Yeah.
why you need to do this, why it's a necessity to do things, is so vitally important. And what I've noticed, even when I was getting the podcast and some of my other ventures off the ground, is I did have a very comfortable job, and like those long hours, those late nights sometimes don't seem worth it, because I've already made it pretty comfortable for myself. So I definitely can relate to what you just spoke about there. So I guess you've started multiple businesses, it sounds like, and now you're in the process of kind of giving back and helping other people build those same businesses. Um, what I guess my next question is what kind of spurred on this sense for you to start giving back and help, reaching back and helping other people along.
Yeah.
Kind of got my ideas, but I'd like to hear from you.
Sure. No, I was going to say, this sounds cliche also. I mean, things are usually cliche because they're truths. But what happened was, back in 2012, late 2012, late 2011, early 2012, was I sold a network of e-commerce stores that I built, starting back in 2007, 2008. And basically I had a lot of free time, like more free time than I had when I was running this group of stores. And then I was like, okay, what do I do now? Was like a little bit lost, wasn't sure what's next. So everything at that point that I had built, it was through trial and error. It was through just doing work. And then I was like, okay, let me go on Google and let me see if I could find a mastermind or a community, or I think I went even on like meetup.com, and like, are there other people out there doing what I'm doing that I can talk to and see, what their trajectory looked like. And what I found back then was, I found one website, and it was the warriorforum.com, which still exists, but definitely tanked. And back then I saw there was a section that was called like eCommerce Mastermind or something. And I was reading through all of these forum posts, and the information was just so bad. And I could tell like people were so misguided, that I was like, is this really what's out there? And I thought to myself, like, thank God this is not how I started, because if I, didn't do the work myself, and if my starting point was going on Google and searching for, e-commerce mastermind or something, and I found that, I just knew by reading through this stuff at that point, after 5 years of experience, that I would have failed. So I was like, okay, again, I had time. Let me like respond to some people's questions on there. And it started by me just contributing. So somebody said, hey, I'm trying to figure out how to use Google Ads and this thing's not working. And I would say, oh, try this or switch this up. And somebody said, oh, I don't know where to find a supplier for this product. And I would say, oh, go here. So that was the beginning. It was me just answering questions. Like I'm sure happens with a lot of people, when you give value, people are attracted to it, and started to get messages of people saying, hey, can you mentor me? Can you coach me? And I never wanted to be like one-on-one, time for money, pay me X amount of dollars and we'll get on the phone. So I always would say no, but I noticed same questions coming up again and again. And then that became a series of videos I put together where instead of me typing out responses, I would just say, okay, here's what I do. Here's how I pick a niche. Here's how I do market research to see if it's a good one. Here's how I build a website. And that was, I think, like probably mid 2012 was when I made that first version of these videos. And that was the first version of Dropship Lifestyle, which is now in version 7. So we update it every year, but that's how it came about.
Awesome. I want to back up to a point that you made about misinformation, and we all have the power to look up any and all information these days, and you seem to be the type of person that just got a shred of information and dove in and did the work. You almost have to, when you build a business, you have to do instead of spending your hours researching and looking for things, you almost have to do a little bit of research and then implement. And we can get so overloaded with information that we paralyze ourselves. And that's definitely, I just wanted to highlight that for our listeners there. And sounded like you had something to add there too.
Well, yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, that was one thing, right? Like from that book, also the 4-Hour Workweek, like he talks about basically like going on, I don't know what he calls it. I haven't read the book in a decade, but it's like a diet from the news or something like that, but basically like blocking out all stuff like that. And, if something important happens, somebody will tell you about it. You don't have to have CNN streaming 10 hours a day to get your brain just like full of whatever garbage. So it's the same thing, like with all this information out there. The problem is not only is there too much, but it's also conflicting. Because like I said, even back then, like when I came in and started helping people, like my information was conflicting with what other people were saying. So what's even worse than just consuming is consuming from a dozen people and being like, I don't know who's right, because you can't do it all. Yeah. So that's why, I think, getting like even with my programs, I don't try to just give people, 50 hours of content and say, have fun. I try to like give them something to follow, but let them kind of fill in the blanks also, because that I think is the only way. Even now when I'm trying to learn something new, there's courses for everything. I do buy some of them, but I won't watch the full thing. Usually I try to get my mind around the concept and then I try to figure it out, because that's how you're going to make it work for yourself.
Yeah, you have to get over the mindset that the answers are always available to you, because what works for you isn't necessarily going to work for me. Like that's what I found, and what I'm definitely what I'm trying to do here recently with my show and what I've got going on is give people tools to answer their own questions, and not necessarily say, here's what I've built, this is the answer, if you don't conform to this, go somewhere else. Like I want to give people tools to be able to fill in the blanks themselves, like you mentioned. And I think that's much more valuable. That's something that I definitely picked up in my time in the military that I, didn't necessarily carry over right away into my civilian roles, is learning from the ground up. That's what made me successful in my military career. And you have to do the same, whether you're listening and you have a regular 9 to 5, or you're building a business. I think that methodology that you stated definitely is the way to go and the right way to do it, because you can study all you want, but if you don't know how to practically apply your knowledge and the knowledge that you gain from others, you're going to be dead in the water. Yeah.
And like you said, everybody is going to, approach things a little bit differently, and people will have different unique skill sets, and you should be able to, that's how you'll have like your edge. So whatever you're getting into, you can insert what you're good at. And, maybe you're much better at operations than I am. And when you build your business, you have a much, stronger team than I do, or something like that. But yeah, it's not just like, everybody says like, oh, this is like, where's like the secret? Where's the one thing? And it's not one thing. There's concepts, but then it's what you do with them that will make you successful, or that will make you somebody, that goes through every course and watches every video on YouTube and reads every blog post and has a lot of information in their head, but no results to show from it. So yeah, I mean, even I would recommend if anybody kind of feels like, oh, that sounds like me right now, just block it out. Like give yourself 2 months and just, say like, I am only gonna maybe like listen to this one podcast, and I'm not gonna go on YouTube and click around in the newest video that shows me how to do that thing. And I'm not gonna read, all these different blog posts. But this next 2 months, that time that I usually commit to education is going to be committed to action. And then 2 months later, go back and see what you missed. It's not going to be anything that would have really helped you anyway. Because what's going to help you is when you're actually doing what everybody has been recommending for however long you've been learning.
Yeah. So describe to me what that 2 months might look like for you of taking action. Like, are you still like getting little snippets of information that you might need? Like, okay, I took this action, but it didn't quite work out. Let me get some information and see where I can course correct.
Definitely. And that's every day. So, one of the biggest things is like, let's just say I was going to build a new store. Let's say somebody was going to build a new store and they had a 60-day window. I would say, the first few days is probably just like brainstorming different product types to sell. If you were going to do what we do, we focus on selling expensive products, at least $200, usually $1,000 or more. But that's like, so you'd be brainstorming product ideas. Then I would say probably at least a week, maybe longer, you'd be doing what I call market research, which is really just going on Google and searching for whatever the thing is that you want to sell, and then finding everybody that's selling it, every company that makes it. Try to find reviews of the different brands that are already making these things. And what you're doing in that point is just kind of going as deep as you can into that. So if it was stand-up desks, I would try to learn everything I could about them, the different types of them, different price points, which companies are making them, what type of reviews do the companies have already, which ones are new, which ones are unique, and trying to become not an expert, but just familiarize yourself with what it is you want to sell. So that's a big mistake I see people make. They just think like, oh, okay, I want to try to sell this thing, and they go and they build a website. Like, don't do that yet. Put a lot of time into research. After that, I would say, now you know your market. Then, okay, go to Shopify, which is who we use to build our e-commerce stores. Make a free account for, I think, 2 weeks they give you. Then you could build basically the framework of your store. Even if you're new, the good thing about building websites now versus back when I started is there's a learning curve, but in a week, you could pick it up. You can make something that people would buy from that you'd be proud of. So maybe at that point, like you're 3 weeks in, you've done your research, you've built your website. What I would recommend from there is spend at least a week reaching out to all of those brands that you found that make the thing you want to sell. Not just, I shouldn't say just any of them, but the ones that had the better reviews, right? The ones that people were saying, oh, this thing arrived damaged or the quality sucks, it's not worth the money. Don't call them. Call all the other ones, build relationships, tell them why you want to sell their products. Don't just say, hey, can I sell your stuff? Say, hey, I was looking into this market. I noticed that you have 5-star reviews everywhere I looked. I noticed that the market seems to really prefer the bamboo desks you make over whatever the plyboard ones from this other company. We would love to work together. So again, spend maybe a week just building those relationships. Then another week probably uploading the products to your website, making sure your product pages look good, making sure the descriptions look right, making sure all the buttons work and people can add stuff to their cart and actually buy it. And then from there, maybe you're like 4 or 5 weeks in. The next 3 weeks or maybe 4 weeks, you're figuring out traffic, you're learning Google Ads, you're seeing what's working and what's not. So yeah, it's not like an overnight thing. And that's why I'm saying, because like that first 60 days, you wouldn't have made a dime. Maybe by like week 7 or 8, you had a sale come in. But when it starts to pay off is the month after and the month after that. And then a year later when the snowball effect happens. So it's not 5 minutes for this, 5 minutes on that, then I'm rich. It's work over time.
Right. And people get a false sense for actually how much time it takes to build a business. And actually nowadays you can build a business much faster than you could 10, 20, 30 years ago. And how do you prepare, the people you work with for that long haul type mindset? What type of generic advice can you give?
Yeah. So I do a couple of things. So like one thing we have in the program, it's called like a mindset course. And I'm not big into, I don't know, the self-help type thing, but it's just like a series of short videos that just kind of go through some of what we talked about earlier, that like listen, like this is up to you at this point, talking about also, like you said, it's cliche, but what's the real reason you're going to make this work, or what's the reason you're going to give up? Figure that out. Like if there's a real reason you're doing this, I tell people, literally write that down, and not like I want to quit my job. But like, why do you want to quit your job? Right? Like is it your boss? Is it you're underpaid? Is it you've never got a promotion? Like really have that why. So when you feel like I don't want to call anybody today, just look at that and think about why you started. So I help people with that. And then trying to get people to follow a system in order, I think is really helpful. So we created something called the 21-day launch plan. And what that is every day for 21 days, I email people. Obviously it's automated, but I email people saying, hey, this is day 1. Here's what you should do today. Okay, it's day 2. Here's the one thing you should accomplish today. Here's day 3. And I take them through that. And if people follow that, in 3 weeks, they have a store that's up, that's live, that's ready to go. So I'm trying to just guide them through sequentially. So, you know what happens, like a month will pass after people buy something and they'll be like, oh, I should go log in. So we try to not let that happen. Of course it happens all the time, but we try to block that.
Yeah, absolutely. So what are some of the niches that are pretty popular right now? I mean, so I can imagine some people are out there listening right now and like thinking like e-commerce, like, oh, that doesn't sound all that exciting, but there's a niche out there for everybody, whether you're
Yep.
military or big into fitness, or if you're into
Definitely.
arts and crafts. I'm sure there's something out there for everybody, right?
Yep. Yeah. So basically, like I'll give some examples, but the criteria that we usually look for, again, is over $200 average order value, ideally $1,000 or more, something where there's not like a go-to brand already in somebody's head for. So I call that like brand loyalty. You don't want to sell something like that. So don't like think like, oh, I want to sell tablets because people are going to buy an iPad or they're going to buy a Microsoft Surface. So not something like that. And then we also want to sell products that appeal to the upper middle class. So, some examples would be basically like any type of home goods. So whether that be like, a media cabinet or, sofa, we have people that sell horse saddles, people that sell like things to practice your golf swing on, things like you mentioned, exercising. We have people that sell ellipticals. We have people that sell kettlebells, free weights, different home gym setups. We have people that sell, wine refrigerators. There's like a ton of different things like chandeliers, just anything that would meet that criteria where there's not a brand that people are just going to go buy. And another thing to look for is like, can you just go locally and buy it in a store? And it's okay if someone can do that, but if there's more options that probably aren't in the local store, that makes sense. So like gun safes would be another example, right? Maybe somebody wants a gun safe that's a certain color, that's, an exact height and width to fit whatever in their closet. And maybe they can go to like a local gun store and they have, 5 safes on display. None of them are what they want. That person would then go to Google and search for it, and they could find probably 500 different colors and sizes and weights and price points. So things like that, where, we can give customers more options. That's what we're drawn to when looking into product selection.
Okay. And how much sort of marketing experience are people walking into, starting their own stores with? Is it like absolutely zero experience, novice? Like, is there a minimum requirement?
Yeah, most people we work with start from zero, and they learn as they go. They learn through training videos we do, but like I don't want to say it's like the easiest thing in the world to figure out, but I'll say it's not. You don't have to be a genius to put things together. So just like when you're building your website and figuring out Shopify, there is a learning curve, but maybe a week, 2 weeks of being in your ad account, going through videos that are showing you what everything means and how to use it. Pretty much anybody could have it figured out. Like I was never a great student. I never excelled in math or anything. And now I can, any analytics dashboard or any Facebook ad dashboard or any Google ad dashboard, I consider myself an expert in there. And it's not because I'm some super smart guy. It's just because I figured it out and spent time learning what everything actually means and how to make use of that data. So yeah, a couple of weeks, I think anybody could figure it out.
Okay. And you also mentioned Facebook. That seems to be like, in one aspect, kind of the king of where you can market to, but also where you have the least control over how you are marketed and who sees what.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess how are you kind of dealing with that? I don't know. Maybe you're not seeing the same thing I am, but how are you dealing? dealing with that, and how you're helping people get over that problem.
Yeah, no, we see that as well. So most of the money that we spend on ads goes to Google ads. And the reason is because we do sell these more expensive products. So let's just say it was something like a gun safe that was $500. What we try to get customers from is when somebody goes to google.com and they type in, brand name, gun safe, SKU number, whatever it is, then we pay to advertise via what's called Google shopping ads. And they are like, you see, like when you search for a product on google.com, you see the product image, you see the product price, you see store names, and then any promotions that the store might be offering. Those are paid ads. They're known as Google shopping ads. And that's where most of our traffic comes from. And it's because the person searching for the thing has intent, right? They know what they want. They're searching for it. So then we put it in front of them. Then once they get to our website, it's our job to convince them to choose us and to buy. But that's where our buyer traffic comes from. With Facebook and Instagram, what we do is almost all remarketing. So, if it was a $500 gun safe, again, let's say, I'm not going to go on Facebook and make an ad that shows to people that are interested in guns, because what are the chances that they're in the market for a $500 gun safe right now? So most of that budget on Facebook is they came from Google, they searched for the thing, they didn't buy it. Now they're on Facebook scrolling through, and we say, hey, you didn't buy this, come back. Here's a reason to buy from us.
Okay. Well, we're starting to bump up against time here. This has been very interesting. I'm definitely taking some notes here, and definitely learned a lot myself about maybe some areas that I can improve with both of my businesses that I have going on. But if people are looking to get in touch with you and want to maybe check out your programs, how can they do that?
Sure. The best place would be dropshiplifestyle.com. Everything is linked up off there. So how to contact me, how to see the free videos I put out every week, how to get our programs, all there at dropshiplifestyle.com.
Okay, cool. Free videos, huh? What type of content do you put out with those free videos?
Yeah, I've been doing this for like 5 years now. It's called Dropship Weekly, and it's a weekly video. And typically what I'm doing is like highlighting different stories from our online communities. Mm-hmm. So if people are saying like, hey, this good thing happened, just kind of try to shout them out, give them credit for that. And then if there's any questions, which there always are, that had come up in the past week, I'll typically just pull a question and then answer it in video format, and it goes up on the blog.
Cool. I'm definitely going to have to check that out myself too. So definitely recommend anybody listening out there, if this is piquing your interest, check out what he's got going on, or what Anton's got going on. And man, you got any golden nuggets you want to drop on us here? Something we might not have had a chance to get to here before we sign off?
Yeah, I would just say, if anybody, if you're serious about this and you want to get into e-commerce, just make sure that you do the research up front. Don't rush into anything. Don't just pick a product randomly. There's a lot of people out there that, show these big numbers in terms of revenue, but don't have a lot of profit to show at the end of the month or at the end of the year. So research is important. You should put just as much time into that as you do setting up your site and getting traffic.
Okay, right on, man. Well, thanks again for your time, and this has been an awesome conversation, and look forward to staying in touch with you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you for tuning in to the Zero Excuses podcast. Join the conversation at kenyonzitska.com in our Facebook group. And don't forget to rate and subscribe to our show. We'll talk to you next week. And always remember, results, not excuses.